Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Anderson's TV. Today, my very special guest is Luke from the band Thunder, and we're going to talk about your life as a guitar player, what you got in, how you got into it, and some of the things you've experienced in your life. And we're also going to talk about a cool new album that you guys have coming in the new year.
Yep.
And the gigs surrounding that. But let's go back to sort of, you know, what it was growing up.
1852.
In 1852, yes. No, go on. In all seriousness, I know the band formed at the back end of the 80s, I think, didn't it? Or you guys all met up in a previous guise. But even prior to that, when you were a kid, tell us about life.
Well, as a very small child, there was always music around. My parents were very young when I was born. They're both art teachers, and it was the 60s. So there was always something going on in the house. There was always parties and various people around, and there was always music, particularly the Beatles. There was a lot of the Beatles. And one of the earliest things I remember is going to see Hard Day's Night, but when I was 4 years old.
Wow. Saturday morning cinema.
Well, no, it's in the evening actually.
Okay.
I was allowed to stay up late. I remember it. Yes, it was very, but that was quite special. And I always had those little plastic toy guitars as a kid, yeah, I loved the Beatles, and I didn't really kind of associate it with playing an instrument particularly until maybe it was 1971 when I was 11. I went to see T-Rex for my first gig. And so 11 years old, impressionable young lad, and it was just overwhelming. You know, it was right when he was at his peak of his powers, Bolan, and it was fantastic. The gig was great, but what really freaked me out was the audience, and now just looking around me, how everybody was reacting to this. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is what I need to do. I need to do this. So I went home and told my poor mother, I said, I'm going to do that. And she went, yeah, all right. We'll get you, pass your exams. You can do what you like. And then, of course, my parents had separated by that point. I went to stay with my father one weekend, and I realised that he had quite a good album collection, and one of the things he had was the first Hendrix album, Are You Experienced? And that was just...
mind blown.
Unbelievable, yeah. And I saw Phil Hendrix smashing up guitar playing at his teeth, and I thought, I definitely want to do this. So I pestered my father like hell, and he eventually bought me a sort of, I think it was £10, Spanish nylon strung guitar.
Yeah. And
his new wife actually played guitar, and she actually had a guitar, and she showed me a few chords. Strangely enough, right-handed. And no Thunder knows, I am left-handed, and so I started off being able to kind of play equally badly right-handed, and then, of course, as soon as I discovered Hendrix, I thought, no, I've got to be left-handed. I am left-handed, he was left-handed, he's the daddy, I need to be like him. So I swapped it over, and then I had one guitar lesson at school, and the guy said to me, right, he said, who's your favourite guitar player? I said, Jimi Hendrix. He said, I don't really think I can help you. He was a very orthodox Spanish thing. But he said, you should probably play right-handed. So I went back to being right-handed. And then I thought, no, that's not good enough. I went back to being left-handed. Yeah, but the first sort of year I was playing, I could play equally badly either side. And I wish I'd kept it up. It would have been a good party trick.
Is it Michelangelo? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, Steve Vai does it as well.
Does he? Like both?
Yeah. But I didn't, of course. And so it started then. And then, there was a lad who I was at primary school with, called Tony Myers, and he and I kind of grew up in each other's houses between sort of 11 and 14 maybe, but we went to different secondary schools. I went off to the Potter Grammar School, much to my aggravation because I didn't play soccer, and he went to the local comprehensive, and so we stayed really good friends. And his father or his uncle gave him a load of embassy cigarette tokens, and he got his first guitar that way. So we used to sit there with our guitars. He'd learn stuff from kids at school, and we'd learn stuff from looking at stuff on the telly, and we just played around. And then it came to us, right, we should form a band. So we did, and it was mainly from kids from his school. And the lead singer wanted to be a lead guitar player, so I got sacked very quickly, which was good. And at that point, he felt really guilty, so he introduced me to this guy who was a drummer. He had a drum kit anyway. Whether he was a drummer was arguable, but. So I had a drummer, I went around this guy's place, just sort of started a band with him, and there was another guy at school who, way much later down the year, went on to be Thunder's manager, but we'll come back to that. And he was, can I be the singer? I said, yeah, great. So he came along, and he's obviously absolutely awful. I mean, he couldn't sing at all, bless him. but he was very keen. And around that point, Danny came out to my house at one school lunchtime and saw the drum kit and was quite impressed with the drum kit, I think. And then he basically said, I'm a singer. I said, okay, I'm not so sure. He said, no, I've got a microphone. I went, really? So he must be serious then. And so that's how Danny and I started sort of together really. And obviously when he did start singing, he could. So that was good. And so then we were kind of off really. And, usual thing, played gigs at school, left school, started playing in pubs. It got to a point where we thought, well, if we're going to take this seriously, then we need to get the best band we can. So we kind of raided all the other bands in the area and nicked the best drummer and the best bass player. And the best drummer, Harry, was still with us. And that was it, and we were off. This is the end of the 70s, start of the 80s. So there was still a kind of healthy and buzzing kind of pub scene there. So you could get 20 pub gigs in and around London. You know?
Yeah.
Not there anymore, unfortunately. So we learned the way people did back then, trial and error, playing to one man and a dog, all of that stuff. All of those cliches, sleeping in the back of a van in Yorkshire in a snowstorm, all of that stuff.
Brutal.
We did it all.
Were you writing your own stuff at this point?
Well, yeah, it kind of that started really probably about 1979, I think. And we met a guy who went on to be our first manager. He was a real character. His name was Robert Wace, and he'd managed the Kinks in their great years. And we entered this talent contest, and he happened to be there, and he was a very interesting man. He was about 6'4", an aristocrat, bald, and he wore a cape. We'd never seen capes in southeast London, so we were a bit concerned about him at first. But he turned out to be very good for us, really, because he taught us lots of little pearls of wisdom that that's still kind of relevant today. But he taught us the importance of being professional, being good, having good songs and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of, I suppose, being the guitar player, it sort of fell to me really, and I sort of went off and then started. And my first few attempts were pretty bloody awful, to be fair, but then I started to kind of, it's like everything else, the harder you work, the better you get. And then they started to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And then he managed to get us our first deal, which was with CBS as it was at the time. This was 1984. And
this is the
Terraplane.
Terraplane. So the band, that band name lasted all the way through till
it did, yeah. Well,
with
Terraplane, we were at school. We were called Nothing Fancy, and we really weren't. So that was quite an apt name. And then we changed the name to Terraplane about, I think, about 81, 82.
What even is a terraplane?
Eh?
What even is a terraplane?
It's a car. It's a 1930s car. You've seen a lot of gangster movies with running boards at the sides and stuff. Hudson Terraplane, yeah. And so that lasted till 88, I think. And and we were off. And we were then a professional band with a record deal and touring professionally. We did the first big tour was opening for Meatloaf in 1985, and it took us everywhere, all around the country, playing in theatres, arenas, everything really. And that was a massive, massive, massive learning curve, because we'd only really played in pubs and bars before that. So we learned very, very fast about, not just about, being musicians and stuff, but we learned a lot about the business very fast and absorbed everything. And we were very keen to learn as much as we could. And, it all became very useful later on down the line, with social media and looking after ourselves and everything. But we got to 1988 and we'd made 2 albums. Neither of them had been particularly successful. The second album was a real battle because our label, Epic, which was part of CBS, were primarily a pop label. And they had some great pop acts, Sade, Wham, just there's loads. I've got Paul Young, loads.
Yeah.
And it was the 80s, and they just didn't know what to do with us, really. But they knew pop music, so they were pressurising us into becoming a pop band. And our second album was produced by a guy called Phil Pickett. Phil wrote or co-wrote all the Culture Club hits.
Right.
And he was great. I learned a lot working with him, but it wasn't what we were about, really.
Sure.
And so we went on from that. We got very frustrated. Then we decided in 1988, myself and Danny took just a kind of investigative trip to the States, which we'd never been to. And we did a week in New York, a week in LA. And we somehow managed to arrange a load of meetings with some quite high-powered execs, God knows how. We just made a few phone calls, probably out of naivety, really. And I think maybe they were quite interested to know who these two sort of kids were from England who you know, who had sort of had the audacity to call their offices and try and make them important. So they saw us a lot of the time, and it was quite interesting. So we got into places like big agencies, labels, talked to these people, soaked it all up once again, and we got to LA, and there was a real scene happening. It was '88, so there's bands like Motley Crue,
Guns
N'
N'
Roses.
Roses.
That was all,
Yeah.
you know, fermenting and at that point, it's kind of coincided with me writing a couple of songs that went on to be on the first Thunder album. And it all kind of started to make sense. It's like, well, hang on, this is something here that we can kind of, you know, attach ourselves to as an area we can kind of plug in and sort of, you know, identify with something here. And so that trip was kind of quite energising. We went back from there with a real sort of sense of purpose and stopped Terraplane, thought we've got to change the name at least, change a couple of personnel, and you know, and like I said, I had these two songs which went on to be the sort of template really, and that coincided really with us meeting Andy Taylor from Duran and Power Station, who ended up producing the first album.
Right.
We'd been very impressed with the most recent Aerosmith album, which was Permanent Vacation. At that point, just prior to
Who was that? Was it Mutt Lang and...
No, it was Bruce Fairbairn.
Right.
But what fascinated me the first time I heard it was how
Come in.
was the first time. It was the first time. It was the sound. Technically,
Yes.
it sounded like you were in the room with the band, and the engineer was a guy called Mike Fraser.
Right.
So I said to the manager, "We have to have him. We need him." And he sent the demos off to Fraser, and Fraser came back and said, "Yeah, I'd love to come in." Brilliant. So he was in, and then around about the same time, we changed accountant. Probably rock and roll.
Yes, very rock
But
and
our
roll.
accountant represented Andy Taylor. And we said, "Oh, we're looking for a producer." He said, "Oh, Andy Taylor's looking to produce an English rock band." So I sat down with Taylor and we wrote a song called She's So Fine, which is the first song on the first Thunder album. And so that relationship was kind of very fruitful. So we had a team, and then it all seemed to happen very quickly. After we made the demos, there was an article in one of the music papers, and then all the labels were on the phone. It was peculiar. And we'd gone from being kind of, nobody gave a toss about Terraplane to most of the major labels wanted to sign Thunder. So it was a fascinating and exciting time. We went with the EMI in the end because they had, you know, because of the experience with CBS not being a rock label, and the EMI definitely were with Maiden, Choir Boys, all sorts of, they had a massive rock roster. So we went there, and they were great. And they said to us, "Well, you know what you're doing. You know, we were, by this time we were 29, 30. We had a very, very clear idea of what it was we were trying to do. I think our A&R man, bless him, was a guy called Nick Gatfield, and he's the guy that signed us, and he was the sax player in Dexys Midnight Runners.
Aha!
And he said, "Look, I don't know much about rock." He said, "But you should know what you're doing." I think he turned up once during the making of the album, and nobody was there, everybody had gone home. So, yeah, so they let us get on with the EMI, and you know, out of that came Backstreet Symphony, which didn't take long to record. You know, and was very successful for a debut album, and you know, we were off to the races, really.
Was the American... Because I think there are probably more stories of British rock bands that didn't crack America and sort of bankrupted themselves in the process. But, you know, I'm just trying to think, you know, Def Leppard is one of the, you know, that obviously did make it big over there. Maiden, obviously. But what was your experience
as was sort of
trying to crack America?
It was interesting because our timing in the UK was very good. We'd come along at the right time where labels were looking for, you know, the British Guns N' Roses or the British Bon Jovi or whatever it was. And we started in America very badly because the partner label to EMI was Capitol in the States, and this guy had just taken over Capitol and he just hated rock. It was that. He said, we went over there to do 2 showcases, and he said to our then manager, "I just don't see it with these guys, I'm sorry." So at that point we knew we were sort of, you know, well, to put it bluntly. So we went back to EMI in the UK and said, "Look, you know, you need to release us in America because they're going to bury us, nothing's going to happen there." And after a bit of grumbling, they eventually agreed to sort of release us from contract. And about the same time, almost coincidentally, Geffen Records showed interest, and this was because of, I think, Steven Tyler, obviously via Mike Fraser working with us, and Axl Rose and David Coverdale had all mentioned us to John Kolodner, who was the A&R man there. He came over and we were playing down at Donington, as it was then, with Whitesnake and Aerosmith, and he was on Aerosmith's tour bus, and we were live on Radio 1, so we heard the band. These guys are great. So we found ourselves on a plane out to LA again, and the next thing you knew, we were signed with Geffen, and they decided that they would release the same album, put it in a different sleeve, remaster it. Mm-hmm. It was essentially the same album. And the first single was a song called Dirty Love, and that just rocketed. It was all over MTV like a rash. The album sold 250,000 copies, and we thought, well, hey, this is it. And but
oh, damn it,
quite work that way. What happened was at the peak of this, we were booked on a tour with David Lee Roth and Cinderella. It would have been fantastic, coast to coast, all lovely. And our American manager called us and said, don't bother coming. Tickets aren't going well, it's not selling. You'll look like the house band on the Titanic, was his phrase. And what had happened was basically grunge.
Right.
It exploded. Geffen were at the kind of forefront of this. I think they actually bought Sub Pop, the label where all those bands like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins were signed to. And it had just kicked off. And the guy who, I suppose, was in charge of where the funding went at Geffen just went, let's steer away from mainstream rock and roll. We're going to go, grunge is the new thing. And at that point, there were lots of kind of fraught discussions. And we looked at the possibility of going over there and touring in our own right, because, we'd sold 250,000 records. We thought there must be pockets of support around the country, but they would not fund it in any way.
Right.
At that point, we thought, well, it'd be very difficult. It's a very big country. If the label aren't behind you, it's hard. And so we decided to go where the love was and not bother, which probably in hindsight might have been a mistake. I think probably if we'd have taken it on the chin a bit then and gone, maybe we should just go and do a few shows. But, it's easy to
hindsight, wonderful thing, isn't it?
And so since then, really, nothing much has happened. We did one kind of small tour just before the grunge thing occurred. We just played like a handful of dates and went down very well. But that was it. So, yeah, frustrating, but what can you do?
Was that the beginning, you think? I've met Danny once before and was quite taken with how engaged you are with your fan base and how important that relationship is for you. Do you think that was that the beginning, you think, of sort of going, look, we can't rely on a label and to sort of make sure that we're looked after for the end of our days, or was that even before then? Were you?
Well, I think that was right at the inception of the band. We, when we did our first couple of tours over here, which were in very, very small places, and we, ended up, some of the gigs there were literally 5 people there, so we thought, well, we just invited them into the dressing room to here. And it kind of started really that way, and I'm not sure how premeditated it was, but it became a thing. Yeah. After every show, we would sort of meet the punters, and obviously as the audiences got bigger, we had to find ways of managing that and making it realistic, because if you're playing in front of 1,000 people, you can't invite all of them into the dressing room for a beer. But it grew and it became more organised. But it's always been something we've always done. And so unwittingly, we were very ahead of the game there. Lots of bands do it now, but we didn't kind of know quite what we were doing. We just sort of did it instinctively, I think. And everybody in the band is a sociable character, so we're quite good with people. So it seemed like a good thing. And then it became popular, very popular with the punters, and then you get the energy back, and then it's, this is quite good. So, so we still do it today. And, it's, thank God we did. It's one of the things we got very, very right without knowing it at the time.
That kind of huge seed change that there was from sort of, very guitar-centric mainstream rock through to the sort of, I guess, grunge in the States and Britpop over here or whatever, that sort of, I was going to say, took the thunder away from that kind of, but no pun intended. How do you then deal with that? I mean, were you very single-minded about the type of music that you wanted to make, and you just sort of, ride it out? Or was it, you're thinking, oh God, we need to make a different, the next album needs to be different?
Well, I mean, obviously, like all musicians, you're always influenced by what you hear and what's going on. I mean, you know, if you didn't soak up some of what was going on around you, then you just keep repeating yourself, you know. So we were aware of what was going on, but we also, you know, because of our experience in Terraplane, knew that you can't go chasing your tail, otherwise you end up nowhere, you know. And so we had we always had a very kind of well-developed sense of what we did best, you know, and it's wandered, you know, off the script here and there, but it's always kind of sounded like us, I guess. So we didn't worry about it too much. I mean, you know, we are what we are. We all go in a room, plug in, and that's how we sound. It's not going to change, and it made us very successful at, you know, the start. I mean, you know, we were very lucky, but it gave us a very, very large and dedicated fan base, which meant that we had a kind of insurance policy that lots of bands don't have. And we knew that our first duty really was towards the punters rather than the industry. And also I think we've always been very suspicious of fashions and fads because they never last long, particularly in this country. I mean, they've gone in seconds, you know. And we knew, like I said, we knew what we did well. We knew, you know, who our fans were, where they were, what they liked. You know, having said all of that, I don't think we could ever make exactly the same record twice because we're not like that way either. So we just kind of carried on and thought, well, the industry's going to do what it's going to do. We're here, we're in this position, you know. I mean, I think by 1999, the first time we stopped, we were getting a bit frustrated because we had a bit the old hamster in the wheel kind of syndrome where we'd go out and tour every, you know, 16, 18 months and do very well and do good business, but we felt like we were playing to the same people and we weren't, you know, there was no way of kind of expanding it. We had nowhere to go, and this is before social media really had kicked in. So we got frustrated and we decided to stop. So we stopped for a while, or went off and did different things. And then we got back together again to do a tour. It's a Monsters of Rock indoor tour, which Danny was kind of got involved in the promotional side of. And yeah, it was great. It went very well. And we were playing in arenas and stuff, second on the bill to Alice Cooper, and it was very successful. So we thought, oh, well, you know, we made an EP to sort of sell the tour, and that turned into an album, and then we were back again, you know. And you know, in the noughties it was a very, very interesting few years because during that period, you know, we'd, you know, basically become completely independent, and it was fascinating because you know, you're trying to engage with, you know, with the internet and all of that possibility of that, you know, make records how you want to make them, budget for it, run the label, get all of those things that you have to do when you become your own kind of thing. And it was very, very interesting.
Interesting good?
Yes, good and bad.
Or,
good and bad.
You know,
it's all things you get used to of being with a label. You know, international is a big problem because, you know, it's different now. Even now, since then, it's changed massively. But then it was very, very difficult to coordinate lots of different things. And have them all going on. Now there's mechanisms in place that deal with all of those sort of scenarios. Then there wasn't really. So it was kind of, I think we were kind of, once again, without particularly realising it, we're kind of at the forefront of something. And we looked at, Marillion were the first band to really do that, strangely enough. And we looked at what they were doing and said, oh, that's quite interesting. Don't like that, but that's good. You know, so we tried to nick a little bit of that and, you know, we talk to people all the time, other people in the industry, and, you know, you plug into other people and you find out what they're doing. So there's a lot of that going on, you know, and we kind of got through the noughties kind of doing that. But, you know, it was difficult. It was difficult. And I think Danny had enough of it by 2009, so we stopped again. And then he went off to become an agent. I started a band called The Union, which lasted for which was only supposed to be a one-off thing, with a guy called Peter Shoulder, who's a great singer, guitar player. And I'd sort of been helping him for a few years with helping him make demos and stuff. And literally I ran into him in a pub. And I said, what are you doing? He said, nothing. I said, I want to even mind, do you want to make an album? So we made an album. And that became 3 albums over a course of 4 years. And we did quite a bit of touring, and that was massively important because what it did, the guy who was managers didn't last long, so I found myself kind of having to manage it, which is not something I I have a natural bent for. I think it's safe to say, but it forced me in a position where I had to deal with quite a lot of stuff, and by then, once again, the social media and all those aspects of it had become a lot easier for bands to navigate, I think, and so I found myself doing lots of things that I wouldn't normally do. So that was good. That was all good, and because Peter was writing 50% of the songs, and because it was a joint project, I had the time to do it. But it was fascinating. And, once again, everybody was off doing other stuff. And, the fortunate thing about Thunder is because we're all good friends, there's never been any animosity when we've stopped. We've always just gone off and done stuff. And kept talking to each other. And then we got back together to do a festival. I think, actually, the truth, I think Danny and I both had a large tax bill. So we went out and had dinner, said, just do some gigs, get the money. Yeah, absolutely right. So we went to our agent and said, look, here's the thing. And so he said, okay, great, yes. And a promoter called Andy Copping, who's legendary for Download and stuff, heard that we were doing this and got on the phone and said, look, I'm putting this tour together with Whitesnake and Journey. Would you guys fancy doing that? So we're going to be rehearsed up anyway. We get to be first band on stage. The money was good, arenas, and we're in the bar by 8 o'clock. I mean, what's wrong with the picture? Nothing. So we did that. And in the course of doing that, we discovered, I think, how popular the band was. Because, when you don't do it for a few years, you tend to forget. And there was one particular show, which was pivotal, where we Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff, and we played there, and we were obviously the first band on, and we went out and we opened and did the first song. At the end of the first song, we had to stop because the audience was making so much noise. And we were all looking at each other going, Christ, did somebody else come on behind us? What's this about? And it was, there was a real love and, enthusiasm for the band. Like I said, I think maybe we'd forgotten. And during the course of that summer, we had a chat about it. I thought, well, if we are going to make another record, now would probably be the time to do it. And and that was 2 albums ago. So, or 3 actually, if you include the live album, or 4, including the one that's about to come out. So so it's been a productive few years since then. That was 2013, and here we are in 2018.
Yeah. That resurgence of bands that, I don't know, just seem to have been around for a while, but still able to go out and tour, and that you're not, there's a real scene, isn't there, and a big scene, for whether it's part of a combined tour with other bands, or even just going out and doing your own thing. I mean, that to me almost seems a bit like a relatively new, sort of like last 5 to 10 years kind of thing. Yeah,
I think in some ways it's a bit like the 60s, because there were lots and lots of package tours in the 60s. I mean, the really odd bills as well. Hendrix, the Walker Brothers, Engelbert Humperdinck, Cat Stevens on one bill. Everybody does
what a gig!
Yeah, I mean, imagine. Everybody does half an hour. Everybody, and the audience go home, they get good value for money. Yeah. And so I think that's probably going to happen more and more and more. It's already starting to happen a little bit.
Thunder, Steps, some sort of, some sort of bizarre, multi-genre.
But it's interesting, though, that the genre-specific thing is something that I think has probably not been good for music, in that, in 1975, Danny and myself went to Reading Festival, and it was so eclectic, you couldn't even imagine it now. Bands like Yes, Wishbone, Astin, Lizzie, Judas Priest, Joan Armatrading, Mahavishnu Orchestra, UFO, Dr. Feelgood, Supertramp, all on one bill.
Yeah.
And you think about that now, and it just wouldn't happen, which is kind of a shame in a way.
I suppose Glastonbury's the only place.
Glastonbury's the only thing that's kind of that's similar.
But yeah.
But they have a real problem with rock music, so that, which is unfortunate, really. But there you go. But yes, it's I think the industry now, bands of our vintage and older were fortunate enough to come along at a time where labels were still investing lots of money in bands. So that allowed us to go out, lose money, or lose somebody else's money, and learn our craft.
Yeah.
And we did, and in the process of doing that, we built up an audience, and the audience has stayed with us. So that puts us in a good position. I think for young kids now, very difficult. Well, how do you, without kind of any investment or backing, it's extremely difficult. And there's so much of it. The downside of the internet is there's so much of it. So anybody can make a record in their bedroom now, and there it goes. And a lot of it, to be frank, isn't great. So there's no filtration. It's just out there, and there's so much for people to take in. Where do you start? It's very difficult, and I'm certainly glad that we came along and we did.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I don't know. I mean, I certainly, I think a lot of people will share your point of view, but equally, I've met emerging artists now who go, if it wasn't for the fact that I could get my own music out relatively cheaply via the internet and build a fan base like that, I would be back at that luck of the draw thing of going, there's 100 acts that are super talented and the record company goes, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you, and the other 99 are just like, what did I do wrong? But that's it.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think it's probably, we all see things through our own experience, don't we? And I just know that there's just so much music now. I think when you have the enthusiasm and the energy of youth, these things don't seem like insurmountable. When you're old git like me, they seem quite difficult.
I definitely think that the one thing that is a standout thing about Thunder though is how you've managed that relationship with the fans. Really, really made them feel engaged and part of the process, and so you have lifelong fans that buy every album and come to every gig, and I think that's whether you're starting a band now or whatever, that's an important lesson. You could look at that and go, well, if it's if you don't have the fans, everything else no one else is going to look after you anymore.
I think the thing that I'm sort of particularly proud of is the fact that we've managed to do that as well without any super mainstream success like Queen or Def Leppard, or we haven't had any of those things. But our fan base is remarkable when you consider that. So it just goes to show that word of mouth is a very powerful thing. I think the fact that the band is a very good live act has really cemented that, because that's where you can't hide. When you're out there in front of the punters, that's the real deal. So you've got to be able to do that and do it well, and do it with a degree of realism about what it is the audience need or want from a show when they come and see you. And you've got to take all that on board and sort of keep edging it forwards as well. And that's the other thing. It would be very easy for us, I think, to not make records and just go out and tour every couple of years, and we'd still do good business and just play the old hits and what have you. But I think it's the fact that we're still looking, searching, pushing forward a little bit that makes us that makes it interesting for us,
Is that because you're happy? Are you happiest when you're in the studio or writing or on tour? Or
I like all of it. I mean, I like nearly every aspect of my job.
Right.
I must admit, I enjoy all of it for different reasons. And it's an interesting mixture of things in that writing for me is kind of largely a solitary thing. I do write with other people occasionally. I always enjoy it when I do. But it's kind of a Thunder album is 6 months of sitting in a room, which is great. I quite like and quite happy in my own company. I'm quite comfortable with that. But the flip of that is when you go out and tour and seeing everybody and hanging out with the guys, having a nice time. Yeah. And that's great too. So best of both worlds for me.
Well, I want to talk about your gear and also about the new album, because the new album obviously is going to sound a little bit different perhaps to some of the older stuff. But gear-wise, you're just a rock icon. Give me a Les Paul and a Marshall stack and I'm away, aren't you?
Well,
I mean, is that?
Yeah, kind of. Although I do like the old traditional things in that a good amplifier and a good guitar. Now, whether the amplifiers have changed over the years a little bit, I'm using Black Star at the moment, which are very good, and they're a great company. I've really tried, really very accommodating. But in the studio, it's a mixture of Fender and Gibson. And Les Paul for a long time. Then I had terrible back trouble.
Oh, right.
Yeah, rotten for about 6 months. I was like a little old man. And and then one of the people that I saw, the physio, looked at me. He's fascinating. He looked at me from the back and said, "You're a guitar player, aren't you?" I said, "How do you know?" He said, He said, you're left-handed as well, aren't you? I said, oh, okay.
Interesting.
He said, I bet you play a heavy guitar like a Gibson Les Paul. This guy, just from looking at me, my underpants, could tell that. It was quite scary. But it turned out he was a guitar player at the weekend. And he just looked at me and said, yeah, you've got all the classic guitar player things going on there. So I said, okay.
Did he give you some stretches to do?
He gave me a load of core exercises and stuff. This is like 20 odd years ago now. And he said, in the meantime, I recommend you get a lighter guitar. So I thought, well, what can I play that does the same job? So I tried a few things, and it was Flying V. I thought, this is really light. It looks cool, and it still sounds like a Gibson.
Yeah.
So then I played the V for a long time, and my back got better, and everything was fine. So after that, I could play Les Paul again, and everything was fine. But for some reason, with the last album, with Rip It Up, I found myself playing Stratocaster a lot on it. I think probably because I'm a lazy sod and it was the nearest guitar to me in the studio. Well, I'll try that one then. And so last tour we did, the Stratocaster became the main guitar. And I think some of that's to do with the fact that Fender are probably making nice guitars again. Because a lot of the ones that I tried out in the certainly late 90s, early 90s weren't particularly good. But I actually bought it from this shop. Look at that.
Hey!
I bought the Stratocaster
I knew
Elite.
there was a reason we invited you.
Yeah, I bought the Stratocaster Elite when it came out.
Oh, amazing.
And it's a fantastic guitar.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so I'm a bit of a slut, really. I just like good guitars.
Yeah.
Obviously, how they look's really important as well.
It's the most important.
Well, yes, it is. Good man, yes, well said. Just remember that, folks. Yes. No, it is. Does it clash with my hair? I don't know. But no, it is. It really is really important. You want a guitar that looks really cool. And but no, yeah. So everything really.
Did it change when you went from the Gibson to the Strat? Did it really change the feel of the music that you were recording? Or?
Not really. No. I think what it was, it just I found strangely. I mean, you know, the popular opinion is that Gibsons are much easier to play than Fenders, for whatever reason. And certainly that was the case for me, you know, 30 years ago. I used Fenders in the studio, but never felt quite as easy to play as Gibsons. But more recently, that's not the case. I find, particularly for lead, I find the Strat a little. Maybe it's because it's slightly longer scale neck, and my hands have got bigger or something. I don't know. It could be anything. I'm not sure. But I find them very comfortable now. I still like playing Gibsons as well. I mean. You know, I just funny enough, I've just been moonlighting with a band called Black Star Riders.
Oh, the old Thin Lizzy thing.
And I was just stood in for a few gigs while they were in between guitar players, and it was fascinating because Scott Gorham, you know, who we used to go and see when we were kids, you know,
sure,
always with the Les Paul Deluxe, and now he's got a Gibson. He's still got a Gibson Les Paul, but it's got the old lock-in trem, and how can you do that? I said to him, it's disgusting.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, really. But he says that he prefers to play Strats, but they don't do what he wants them to do.
Yeah,
Just an interesting thing.
Who's that? I mean, again, you mentioned playing with Scott, and I'm sure that was a amazing guitar player. But is there, if anyone could phone and go, do you fancy? Who would it be? Just like a bucket list thing. They can be dead or alive. I imagine if they're alive, the gig would be better, but it's up to you.
Well, if Pete Townsend ever broke his arm, I'd love to stand in for the Who.
So you do the Who?
I think I could do that quite well too, but everything else I'd be a bit nervous. Or Zeppelin. I mean, that'd be a lovely gig, wouldn't it? But it's all very well, but at the end of the day, you don't realise how difficult those things are until you actually do them. I mean. So it's not something I've done very often, been the kind of stand-in, but you think, oh yeah, I know those songs, and you actually sit down and start to kind of take them to pieces, and it's always harder than you think.
All the Zeppelin stuff is.
It's unbelievable.
The timing's just all in his. It's like it's just all how he feels it, isn't it?
Exactly. It's completely insane,
difficult, isn't it? Well, let's talk about Please Remain Seated, which is coming out in January 2019, and. I think, as the name suggests, it's a little bit more sit down than stand up, or at least that's what I understand it is. So tell us a little bit about, why you felt that was the right kind of album for now.
Well, we sort of, for a long time, in our Christmas shows, the Christmas show things started in 2003, and it's kind of got bigger. And we've done it not every year, but most years. And that started off as being entirely sit-down acoustic guitar, an acoustic thing. And it's mutated slightly, and now it's half acoustic and half electric. But in doing that, we kind of enjoyed the process, and it's a fun thing to do. And that plus the fact that we've been asked quite a lot over the years if we would make an acoustic version of Love Walked In, which is probably our most popular song, I suppose. There's people use it a lot at weddings and that sort of thing, which is very flattering. And I think a few of them maybe thought, well, if there was an acoustic version, then it wouldn't offend my grandma or whatever, So we got asked to do this a few times and then resisted. And then a couple of years ago, I was sitting at home and I sort of started teaching myself piano a couple of years ago. And I was sitting at the piano and I just started playing it in a different key. And I thought, it sounds quite interesting. And then I made a demo of it and, sent it to the band. And then we decided to record it that way. So we did. And it kind of came out of that, really. And, we sat and talked about it. Well, that kind of worked pretty well. And also we had a song that came out last Christmas called Christmas Day, which is largely an acoustic thing. And I think the combination of doing those two songs and sort of thinking, well, maybe we can sort of expand that and push it on. So we started thinking about it and thought, this might be quite an interesting idea. So we booked some time at Rockfield Studios where we were going to record and thought, we'll go down there, just take a load of songs and sort of just throw them at each other and see what happens. And it was a lot more spontaneous than most of our sort of, usually I'll make the demos, send them to the band and we get into the studio and then we work it out from there. But this is very different. It was much more, everybody came in with a few suggestions. And we sat there and it was like, pick up the guitar and let's make it acoustic. Or maybe I'll play electric on this. But the whole process was, it was almost like, how can we, if we were to do covers of Thunder songs, how would we do it? So that's kind of the approach we took.
So it's like the sort of MTV Unplugged kind of thing? Or
Kind
a
of,
little
yeah.
bit?
I mean, they were interested in those MTV things because some of them were really good and I thought some of them really awful. And one of the things we wanted to avoid was just kind of playing the songs the same but with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
So we changed keys, arrangements, tempos, all sorts of things really. And just kind of tried to come at it a little bit sideways, with the kind of criteria that we had to find it interesting. It had to be different enough from the original version to warrant doing. And with some of the songs, we tried and it wasn't happening. But some of them, they just kind of fell together very, very fast. And they were the ones that probably made the album. That it was a kind of natural thing to play them in a completely different way, but it still felt right for the song and sympathetic. And it took us in all sorts of weird and wonderful directions, from jazz, a little bit of reggae, even. I mean, all sorts of stuff. And it was great fun. So we did it, and we whittled it down, I think, across 2 or 3 recording sessions. We whittled it down from about 30 songs to 20, recorded them all.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of songs on the album, isn't there? Yeah.
And we thought, great. And then we all sat in the room like, oh, God, what the punter's going to think of it. Oh, dear, a bit late for that now, we've done it.
That's good. I mean, Miracle Man's out already, isn't it? Or you can listen to it on iTunes, and that's a cool sounding track.
We had kind of the official launch party a few days ago, last week, and we had sort of 40 punters in the room, and the album was played to them, and the reaction was very good.
Good.
And we've had we've seen a couple of reviews that aren't out yet. We've seen them, and they're all very, very glowing, which worries me slightly, because when journalists like it, the punter's going to like it, I don't know. But so far, so good. It's all very positive.
Will it change the way you tour it? Is it like a different...
Yeah, well, basically, we're going out on tour in the UK in February, and we're basically doing the album plus a few other songs that kind of fit. And it will be seated.
Like a more intimate kind of vibe to it.
We're playing slightly different venues, seated venues, slightly smaller than we would normally play, but we think it suits the kind of spirit of the album. And so it's going to be great. And we get to sit down for an hour and 45 minutes, which when you get to our ages, it's very good.
Just wheel you out.
Is that right?
Now,
It's wheelchairs now. See, I hadn't thought of that. So we're looking forward to that. It'll be very different. And once again, it's you know, at our age, it's good to try new things. So, you know, once again, I'm sure we'll, as in the process of doing it, we'll find out stuff about ourselves and what works and what doesn't. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. It should be great.
It's been great. Well, look, I wish you all the very best. You're sort of an institution of British rock and roll. Danny and Luke are going to perform one of the tracks now, acoustically, which I hope you like very much. And we'll put links in the description below where you can go find out more about the band and the album. And when do the tour dates get released?
They're out there now, actually.
They're out there now,
yeah,
good.
if you go to our Facebook page
Cool.
Or our website, www.thunderonline.com, all the info's there, but be quick because it's nearly sold out, so hurry up.
Well plugged that, man.
Thanks,
anyway, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe if you like this, and we shall see you on a video very soon. Bye-bye.
It was early in the evening, I was waiting for a train. I was thinking to myself as I watched the falling rain, I need love, yeah, but I don't know where to get it. Then underneath this big umbrella, she walked in the waiting room. I just had to tell her, though it might have been too soon, I need love, and I think I might have found it. All right. She was some kind of priestess with a black dress on, with her film star kind of features. She really turned me on. And if it takes until forever and a day, I gotta make that woman mine. If I don't tell her, then I wish my life away. She's so fine. She's so fine, yeah. I said, don't misunderstand me, didn't mean to make you blush, but when I got this feeling, I knew I had to rush. I need love, and you know I wanna give it. I've been waiting for a lifetime for a woman like you. I know I'm walking on a fine line, but I gotta see it through. Yeah. And if it fast away tonight while I'm asleep, sorry about that. At least I know I spoke my mind. I'm being driven by some other force that won't be denied, yeah. I've been waiting for a lifetime for a woman like you. I know I'm walking on a fine line, but I gotta see it through. And I should pass away tonight while I'm asleep. at least I know I spoke my mind. I'm being driven by some other force that won't be denied. She's so fine. She's so fine. Ooh, she's so fine. Yeah, bit weird what we got there.